Hello, BookTube. I have book haul number 3 of 2017, and this one isn't new books. These are old books that I found out and about in my various errands. I want to show you too, because there are some gems here. Starting with this one, The Haunted House by Charles Dickens. One of these lovely little classics from Hesperus Press. They did a whole collectible shelf worth of unusual classics, and this is one of the most unusual of the bunch. I wonder if I can show you. No, I can't really show you the table of contents. It's a literary round robin that Charles Dickens did among literary friends of his. A series of ghost stories. He does the first one, and then there are a bunch of others. There's Adelaide Ann Proctor, who's now completely forgotten, but whose story is wonderful. Wilkie Collins. Dickens comes back in. He tells the middle story, and he tells the last story, and this is a collection of that round robin. So it's not just Dickens. It's this thing that he did among his friends that I really wish could happen in the modern day. Wouldn't that be fun? But I guess our modern crop of cokehead writers don't like each other. Or would each require $1 million or something like that. The next one is also Dickens. It's the companion Penguin volume to the Masterpiece Theatre adaptation of Little Dorrit. And this one has the classic floppy penguin spine, but also the let me see if I can find one for you. The illustrations are in here as well, which is always nice, and you don't always get that in a paperback. Yeah, there we go. Part of my 2017 sort of hemi-demi semi quest to like Dickens, and I couldn't help but notice that the Masterpiece Theatre cover has Claire Foy, who is currently starring in the BBC production of The Crown as Queen Elizabeth II. Some of you may have seen my epic review of said production. If not, I'll leave a link down below. I confess I haven't seen the BBC Little Dorrit. Now, since I got this, and since I plan on rereading in 2017, I'm now wondering if it's on Netflix. I'll have to find out. And then the next one, if Dickens was a long shot in terms of authors that I don't particularly like, this next one is beyond the pale, and it goes to show you the lengths to which I will go to seem cool in the eyes of Adam from Memento Mori. I actually got a William Faulkner novel. The Sound and the Fury. It was basically free, and I do admit I tend to like these old vintage paperbacks, the ones that have the histrionic illustrations on the cover, kind of matching the breathless, gin-soaked histrionics of the man's prose itself. But I'm going to give this a fair try. Adam is reading Faulkner in 2017, and I'm going to try. I'm going to try to give it a second chance. And then the next one, a treat that I somehow missed in 1999 when it originally came out. Who is this? Viking printed a hardcover edition of the memoir of Charles Ting from Boston, from 19th century Boston. A 19th century Boston deckhand, cabin boy, midshipman, all the way up to captain. A seaman of 19th century Boston, who traveled all over the world, went all the way to China, had all sorts of adventures, met Princess Victoria, who would go on to be Queen Victoria, met Lord Byron, met King Kamehameha of Hawaii, and encountered all sorts of hardships at sea and on land, and wrote a humdinger of a memoir. There's a précis of it at the Boston Athenaeum, I absolutely love it. Did not know that Viking or anybody had ever done a full dress hardcover reprint of this thing. What a joy to find. And then the next one is this. It's Catherine Boughton, Shouting Won't Help. It's her memoir about going deaf. She was an editor at the New York Times and had a secret. Slowly, but progressively and noticeably, she was losing hearing in one of her ears, and the other one wasn't that much better. And I read this when it first came out, and it stuck with me the whole time. So I wanted another copy. I was glad to find a copy that I can own. She captures really well the sense of shame that she felt over a physical failing, and why that would be. And it turns out the why is because the massive amount of hearing related problems in the United States is largely not understood by medical science and very much underreported. People just assume, that they're going a little hard of hearing. They don't think of it as a health problem. And if you think about it, the technology with which we surround ourselves every day is uniquely equipped to disguise a hearing problem from ourselves. If you have an apartment all by yourself, just you and the cat, and you've got a plasma screen TV, you've got a cell phone, you've got an iPad, you can deal with those volume controls all you want, and you can maximize them to compensate for something that is in fact a medical problem. You shouldn't be compensating for it at all. You should be trying to get it fixed. The reporting that she does in the midst of telling her own story is absolutely fascinating. Turns out, as you might be able to predict from that description that I just mentioned, that most of the people who come in and report their own medical problems, their own loss of hearing, do so because they live with a group. They live in a family. And family members can notice that you're all of a sudden upping the volume to uncomfortable levels for them. They do notice, and that kind of support system pushes people to go to their doctor and see what can be done. The unfortunate downside of this, and I've had experience of this in the last few years in my own life with a person that I know, is that there often is shockingly little that doctors can do. You're losing one of your major senses, and they sit across a desk from you and just sort of openly guess at what could be wrong, and almost no treatments, short of catastrophic stuff that often doesn't work, surgeries and implants that often don't work. It's a fascinating memoir. If you or someone you know is experiencing hearing problems, this is a book to read. And she's also a heck of a writer. And then the last book, it's a chunker. It's enormous. It's this Never Despair. This is Winston Churchill, 1945 to 1965. This is the last chapter of his interminable life, when at the end of World War II he's turfed out by the nation, and spends years in the wilderness, and then comes back as prime minister in decrepit old age, and has a brief and flickering and somewhat misunderstood term in office before he resigns. And the reason that I had this volume when it originally came out, but the reason that I got it again is actually connected with, here, let me find it in this little pile. It's connected with this. Claire Foy's performance in The Crown as Queen Elizabeth II. The first arc, the first season of The Crown takes place in Queen Elizabeth's first year, when her first prime minister is Winston Churchill in that second term of his. And John Lithgow plays Churchill just beautifully. Actually does work on you after a while, especially towards the end of the whole series. And when I finished watching that, I watched it a few times in order to write about it, and when I finished, I realized I kept remembering this book. I kept thinking back, thinking, that was a really good account of Churchill's twilight years. I'll have to make a mental note to get that if I ever see it at the Brattle. And here it is. And oddly enough, this now means that in the multi-volume William Manchester biography of Winston Churchill that he did, that occupied most of his life, because months ago when I was reviewing Candice Millard's book Hero of the Empire about Churchill as a young man, a very young man, in Victorian and Edwardian times, cutting a dash as a military officer, just a boy, really. When I was researching that book in order to write about it, I came across Manchester's first volume on Churchill, covering exactly that period. And I got it and I reread it, and I thought, that was really, really good. And then I watched The Crown, and it's all about Churchill, the elder statesman, Churchill in winter. And I finished it and I thought, if I ever see the appropriate Manchester volume, well, I'll get that too. So now I have bookended Churchill volumes. I have the end of his life and the beginning of his life in this series. And there you have it. That is Never Despair. Can you hear me? Am I still here? The machine just told me I had low power, and I seem to recall that every time it does that, and I say, okay, I acknowledge that I do, it doesn't continue recording, and the upload goes wrong. But we'll give it a try, just in case. So we have Churchill, and we have Shouting Doesn't Help, and we have Before the Wind, A Sea Captain's Tale, and we have The Sound and the Fury, and we have two Dickens, The Haunted House and Little Dorrit. So there you go. That is a book haul number 3. I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.